All right, so we're back here checking out the dozer first sight. Looks like our trailer tire didn't hold up so well, so we're gonna have to look at that. But upon first look at the dozer, everything looks pretty good. The undercarriage looks really solid. I apologize, today, even though it's pretty warm out, it's very windy, so hopefully there's not too much background noise. But yeah, so the undercarriage looks really solid. All the grease fittings are still there, and you know, we're gonna clean all that dirt off there eventually. Our main focus with it while it's still on the trailer is to get it so we can start it and actually drive it off. I don't really want to take it off the trailer until I can drive it. I always usually use that as a goal of mine. This way I know that it runs and that I'll be able to use it in the near future. Now, one thing, a lot of people probably look at this and they're like, wow, this looks like a real heap of junk, like it's, you know, missing parts, this and the other thing. I was able to score the hood and the grill from the guy, as well as the actual the muffler. So I do have that, and with it being off, it makes the tractor look like it just came out of a salvage yard. You can see the guy started working on it. She started doing some new stuff. Hour gauge only says 3 hours on it, so we know that's probably pretty inaccurate. But especially since the cable's not even hooked up. This linkage here, that's not even connected. It should be rotating that assembly when I do this, and it's doing nothing. The on-off switch, that's completely missing. So there's a lot of stuff here. The starter lever, this lever here is what would normally start it, but as you can tell down there, it's not connected to anything. You need to actually be able to push in on this, so it's missing a piece there. So there is going to be a lot of work ahead of us here, but I do have the manuals, the service manuals, shop manuals, so it should make this easier. And having a working knowledge, since I have the same machine, it'll also help with this 3-day weekend coming up, and the weather that we got coming up. I should be able to work on this machine here and get it running very shortly. Like I said, it's all weather permitted. I don't really have a garage space to work on this at the moment, so everything I do is going to be outside. But it should be fun. I'm still learning how to use this device here. I got some type of gimbal, holds the GoPro steady, but I don't know. I'm messing around with all these buttons. It's all tweaked, left, right, up, down. Apparently that does nothing. I don't know what I got going on here. If we look at this electrical system, the last owner had obviously tried to make an attempt at fixing it or whatever was wrong with it. So we're gonna have to chase these wires. Now, I don't know off the hand if that battery is actually even charged or not, but he's got these 2 wires that are bare, that in my mind tells me that he was probably trying to cross them almost like a jump starter, considering that the ignition switch is not there. So if we chase some of these wires, this wire here just goes back to this box, and there are little symbols. I don't know if you can see that, but there's little symbols on the tabs here. So chase that one back. It's doing nothing. Now it sounds like this thing keeps arcing. Yeah. Okay. All right, so the battery's got to be charged. So now we just got to figure out which wires we need to cross, and get this thing running. This blue wire here goes out to our coil, so you would know that would be on one side of your kill switch or your on-off switch. This yellow wire goes to your generator. This black wire comes back, that's also the generator. And then, which one does that leave us? This red wire goes down to the starter, which would be like a signal wire. Back to this voltage relay. So we'll have to look into this diagram and putz around and see if we can't get this thing started. All right, so since we know we've got power out of this battery, this is all going to be just basically for our ignition system. So that's going to allow us to actually start this, send spark to the coil, or send power to the coil, and then send spark to the actual spark plugs through the distributor. But what we want to do right now is we want to see if this starter will even turn the engine over. So we want to do, for safety, we want to make sure that this shifter is in neutral, and this model also has a shuttle shifter on the side. So pushing this forward, the machine goes forward. Pulling this all the way back, it's in reverse. So we want to find neutral here, and this way, when we crank it over, the engine doesn't try to move the machine forward on us. So we're just gonna push this lever in right here and see what happens. All right, that's sweet. That's got some good cranking power, especially for a 6 volt system. So that is very hopeful. Now we just basically need to figure out this ignition system wiring, see what we need to bypass for the time being just to get the thing actually running, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now we know that it'll crank over, and we need to check out the ignition system. So judging by these two wires being disconnected and looking like they've been hooked together before, we're going to try to hook these two together. And then what we want to do is we're going to come over here and we want to check our distributor. So pull this off. All right, so that looks like a brand new rotor, and that looks like a brand new cap. So we're going to pull this off. Now the previous owner told me that he thought it needed new points and condenser, but judging by looking at this, I'm thinking we might be able to get away with just cleaning these points. I don't know if you're able to see that or not, but they look pretty corroded to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a basic piece of sandpaper. I think this is 320 grit or something. I'm just going to fish it in between the points and run it back and forth. This will clean the points off and get any of the corrosion that's built up on there off. Sometimes they get corroded from just running, sometimes they get corroded from sitting with all the moisture, especially these older machines. These dust covers aren't exactly waterproof, and moisture will get down in here. So just take the time to thoroughly clean off these points. Now once we clean these off, if they are in fact pitted, that would definitely indicate that, hey, we would want to change these. But it doesn't look like to me that they're pitted. Now another test would be, right now the points are open, so if we go across these, we should get a spark, which we are. That would tell us that our condenser's actually working properly. So now what we can do, we can put our dust cover back on, put our rotor back on. Now make sure there's a groove there. Make sure that rotor sits back down the way it needs to. And make sure this is fished back on here the way it needs to. Definitely want to rerun that wire differently, because I hate how that keeps getting tangled in there. But we'll clip this back on. If I can get it. Yeah, it's a struggle trying to do this one-handed. Okay, so we got that clipped back on, and now we go back here. Like I said, tractor's in neutral. We're gonna make sure that before we crank it over. Also, one last check we should do is see if the gas is on. This is not on, so let's open this up. And judging by how dirty that is, I think this fuel system's leaking a little bit. That nut is completely cracked, and the carburetor looks newer. Honestly, looks like maybe an aftermarket model. Not 100% sure. This is like plastic. Really not sure about that carburetor. It does not look like the original one by any means, but let's see what happens. Let's crank her over and see if we get any ignition. Let's take this off first. This is just on there to keep the rainwater out. All right, here we go. Now let's see if there's a choke, maybe. It should be getting spark. One test we could do is check the spark to the actual spark plugs, but without having too many tools out here with me at the moment. Now me pulling on this lever here is just moving that mechanism down there. Let's see. Try her again. Okay, starting to smell like gas a little bit, so maybe we'll get rid of the choke. And maybe we'll just double check to make sure this is actually open all the way. These you only have to turn out a little bit if you have a lot of fuel, but if you only got a little bit of fuel left in the bottom of the tank, you can open it all the way for the reserve. All right, let's try this again. All right, before I start draining the battery, I'm gonna just grab a can of ether and give it a little spray and see if we can at least get it to pop and fire over a little bit before we go too crazy here. All right, so I got a can of starting fluid here. I'm just gonna give it a little spray up inside the actual air cleaner here. Now, starting fluid shouldn't be used in excess, but sometimes you need to use it just to get her going. Now, I don't know. Like I said, these wires, maybe these aren't the trick. But judging by the fact that I crossed these and I was getting spark at the rotor, that would, that would tell me that we need to cross these wires here because I didn't have spark there before that. So let's do a little bit more troubleshooting and see what happens. So the really nice thing about having two of these machines is whenever you have a question, you just come and look at the other one. So here is the distributor cap, and here's our two wires. We want to know the wire closest to the generator goes to the spark plug closest to the generator, and then second wire goes closer to the ignition system. So this wire here, generator. All right, perfect. Now we can go back and work on our other one. All right, so now we just visited the other tractor. Now we know this wire here closest to the generator goes to this spark plug up here. Get that pushed on there all the way. Then this wire here goes on this spark plug back here. All right, let's see if we get any luck now. Ooh, we're almost there. We're almost there. I can feel it. Okay. Let's give her a little extra splash, a little extra persuasion, you know? She needs it. That sounded healthy. Now, some of my troubles could literally be old gas, so I probably will have to take the carburetor apart, clean that out, and potentially drain all the fuel out of this tank. He didn't tell me the last time I put fuel in it, but it is quite full because it was leaking out yesterday when we were loading it. But I don't know, let's try again. Maybe if we get a little choke now, see what happens. It wants to. It really wants to, but I don't know. Also, I think this is full throttle. Let's see. Let's see what happens when we do this. All right, it looks like it really wants to start, but it's not quite there. That could just be maybe not strong enough spark. It could be it's not actually getting fuel through the carburetor. Next step, I'll probably just take the air cleaner, bypass that, and spray some starting fluid right in through the carburetor. This way it gets right up into the intake and into the cylinders. But at least it cranks over, at least it wants to start. That's a huge success, you know, considering the condition of this thing and where it's been sitting for God knows how many years. I got a good feeling this time we're gonna be able to get her started. So I'm gonna start on this side of the machine now, spray a little ether in the carb, and push the button through the frame here. We are so close. Well, we finally got the dozer running today. It took a lot of diagnosing. The last guy said that he was having an issue with the spark. He wanted to change the points, the condenser. I went through, I checked all that, and I was coming up with all that stuff being fine. Did a little bit more troubleshooting. The wire coming out of the brand new coil, that wasn't seated all the way down in there, so I think that was part of his spark issue. But after checking a few things, comparing to my other machines, the last thing I tried was just checking the gap of the spark, or checking the gap of the points to make sure that there was a proper distance for the spark. Once I did that, I put the choke full throttle, turned on the fuel. I did clean the carb this morning, so that did help too. But she fired right up, and now she's just a purring. All right, so here we got her running. I did lift up the dozer blade. The guy told me the hydraulics worked really good, and he was not lying. I got her hooked up to my dad's brand new 2500 Dodge Hemi 6.4 liter, and we're gonna pull her forward, reposition her so I can get this off, get it out in the grass, and I can go pick up my dump truck today. I got the custom exhaust on now that the engine's been built, and it'll be another project you'll be able to see in some videos. So let's get this thing moved and let's get her unloaded. we got her unloaded. She seems to be running pretty good. The right steering clutch seems to be hung up a little bit. When it does engage, it stays engaged for a little, you know, for longer than you want it to, but most of the time it just doesn't want to engage at all. So definitely have to take a look at that. Once we get some of the other stuff doctored up, maybe cleaned up, I'll put the hood back on, get the grill on, maybe get some headlights for it. I don't know how crazy I'm gonna go with it. Knowing that it runs, it operates, does what it's supposed to is a huge bonus. So it honestly makes it more valuable just in itself. Like I said, I bought it because it advertises it doesn't run. It's now running just by doing some simple checks on the ignition system and cleaning the carbs. So it was definitely worth the purchase, and hopefully we can clean it up a little bit and make some money on it.